Welcome back. Let us discuss the New York Islanders. Yep, the New York Islanders, as I continue my look at teams that missed the playoffs. This playlist's over halfway done, and then we get into the playlist of teams that got knocked out in the first round and second round, and so on and so on. But the New York Islanders, a team that missed the playoffs this year, and they've been really a team that people have picked to miss the playoffs almost every year, although they made the playoffs in 23 and 24. In both years, they lose in the first round against Carolina. In 2022, and as well as this year, they missed the playoffs. This year, missing the playoffs by 9 points. So they parted ways with general manager Lou Lamoriello. The front runner apparently for the GM job, and I did do a search before hitting the record button on this video. It still seems like Ken Holland is the front runner, and we'll see if he is the general manager for the New York Islanders. We talk about retreads with coaches. It happens with general managers as well. The coach of the team at this point is Patrick Roy. I don't think that necessarily changes with the new GM, but it can. General managers very often will bring somebody in for their head coach. We'll see if that happens with the Islanders. I think Roy should stick around. I wouldn't put any of this on Patrick Roy. I just don't think the team was good enough this year. Now, they do have the number one draft pick via winning the draft lottery, and it is highly likely Matthew Schaefer, a defenseman, ends up being their pick. I have seen the complaints that this year's draft class sucks, yada yada, but Schaefer's considered to be an excellent defenseman. In fact, Craig Button compares him to Drew Doughty. Doughty's had an excellent career, a Norris Trophy along the way, and a couple of Stanley Cups. And other reports I saw say he's an elite skater with size, offense, and he has a high compete level. So once I get into the videos talking about this year's draft prospects, I have a feeling with Schaefer it's going to be one of those that we have a hard time finding any drawbacks with, right? So he's an excellent all-around defenseman. He's got size and he plays that way. Those defensemen don't grow on trees. They're very difficult to find. So I do think the New York Islanders go that direction. I know there are some Islander fans that would like to see Hagen's taken there. I know there's some that think Misa should be the number one pick, but I think Schaefer, being an all-around defenseman and could do a little bit of everything, I think those are pretty highly coveted. Those are very difficult to find via free agency, and trading for one will cost you a ton. You might as well draft him when you have the chance. So looking at their top scorer this year, it was Bo Horvat, and this team had struggles with scoring. Horvat, 81 games, 28 goals, 29 assists, 57 points. He was snake bit at points this year. Anders Lee, a bit of a bounce back for him goal scoring wise from last year. 82 games, 29 goals, 25 assists, 54 points. Lee, the captain. Paul Mary, 82 games, 24 goals, 24 assists, 48 points. He is yet unsigned for next year. We'll see what happens there. Holmstrom, 75 games, 20 goals, 25 assists, 45 points for Simon Holmstrom. Dobson had a bit of a setback in terms of his overall points. Goals stayed the same, 71 games, 10 goals, 29 assists, 39 points. Matthew Barzal missed more than half of the season with injury. That is troubling. 30 games, 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 points. If the Islanders are going to bounce back, and especially if their offense is going to bounce back, they're going to need Barzal healthy and playing most of their games next year. The goaltending, Sorokin is still one of the better goaltenders in the NHL. 30, 24, and 6 record, 907 save percentage. Varlamov was injured most of the year. He finishes 3-4-3 with an 889 save percentage. So what that did was it forced Patrick Roy to play Sorokin a ton, especially down the stretch as they're trying to stay in the playoff hunt. Hogberg's numbers less encouraging. 2-6-3 record, 878 save percentage. One of the first jobs that a GM who takes over this team is going to have before them is, so what do you do with the goaltending? Are you satisfied Varlamov's going to be healthy for this fall and you'll go with Sorokin and Varlamov again? Or do you go out and find somebody else in a goaltending market where there's not a lot of big names that are available right now? Now, looking at the numbers, goal scoring, 27th in the NHL at 2.71 goals scored per game. 20th in goals against at 3.13 goals against per game, so you want to fix both of those numbers. And special teams really caved this team in. If they had decent special teams, I don't know if it makes up that 9-point difference between them and the playoffs, but it comes close. 31st on the power play at 12.6%. 31st on the penalty kill at 72.2%. That adds up to 84.8% put together. That's anemic. Those are numbers that absolutely sink your chances of making the playoffs. And if you look at shots per game, they took 29.5 shots. They allowed 28.7 shots against. This is a team that plays fast games. Islander games usually have very few whistles, not necessarily a lot of penalties. But still, even with the reality that, Islander games can sometimes have very little special teams, those special teams really hurt them. So they have cap space on July the 1st. 28.3 million in cap space on July the 1st. So it will be interesting to see what they do with that. They also have an extra first round draft pick in 2026, but they have not been stockpiling draft picks. This isn't a team that Lou Lamoriello was taking in any kind of a rebuild. And so we'll see what the plan is with a new general manager. Are you trying to get them back above the playoff line next year? Are you planning on, some sort of a little retool here? Be interesting to see where they go. Free agents, the UFA list. Paul Mary headlines that. Hudson Fashing is UFA as well. Got himself a couple of goals towards the end of the season. Mike Riley, UFA. Tony D'Angelo, also UFA. And then the restricted free agents. Siplikov, who had a good rookie season. He is a restricted free agent. I would think probably gets a 3 or a 4 year deal. If Siplikov was a young prospect, I would say, probably a long-term deal. But I think he's 24, 25? So, or 26 even. So, yeah, Siplikov, probably a 3 or 4 year deal there. Maybe they give him a long-term extension. If Ken Holland's hired, does he go more towards long-term or short-term? Holmstrom's going to be fascinating to watch as a restricted free agent. Gatcombe had a strong run that second half of the season, especially towards the end there. Dobson is going to be pricey. Dobson very likely to want 6+ years, probably going to want the full 8 years, and he's probably going to want to get paid as a top defenseman. And then Romanov. Romanov, I thought, had a good year. I've never quite understood 100%. Although I understand Montreal has a lot of good young defensemen, I thought Romanov was worthy of keeping around, but he's had a good run with the Islanders. We'll see how things go for him this summer and what he ends up getting in terms of cap hit and overall monies. Now, looking at their contract situation, they're not in awful shape. They're in pretty good shape. Barzal, $9.15 million cap hit till 2028. He just needs to stay healthy to justify it. I think Barzal's an excellent forward. Horvat, $8.5 million cap hit until 2031. That contract's aging okay. I know there was a lot of complaints about it when it was signed. It was too much money for too much term. A lot said about it, but honestly, at this point in time, with so many players getting 10 million or more in terms of cap hit, and now the salary cap's ready to skyrocket, Horvat's cap hit's going to look better and better every year. Engvall, $3 million cap hit till 2030. Not aging well. It's only $3 million, but that's a contract that the new GM, maybe they look to move that as sort of a symbolic, yep, we're doing things a little different. Or maybe you keep it and you bury him in the minors. That happened at points this year with Engvall. We shall see. Then you got Pulock at $6.15 million until 2030. That's a bargain as long as he's in the lineup. And Pelech, $5.75 million cap hit until 2029. So those contracts, I think, are bargains for both defensemen, Pelech and Pulock, especially when they're out there together. Excellent defensemen for the New York Islanders. Sorokin's $8.25 million cap hit until 2032. I think he earned it this year. He did have his shaky moments here and there, but he played an absolute ton. So when he wasn't necessarily playing great at points down the stretch, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking he's probably overworked. And so you're going to want to make sure that isn't going to happen next year. While you're trying to fix the special teams concern, you're also likely to be looking at getting a backup who's going to be maybe a little more healthy and reliable if Varlamov is still going to be a concern. And at this point in time in their careers, I think it would make sense to get a younger backup for Sorokin than Varlamov, but it is going to be up to, if it's Ken Holland, it'll be up to Ken Holland to get that all figured out. Scoring by period, didn't really work out for them in any of the periods, really. 67-57, they were outscored in the first. They were outscored in the second, 87-78. Outscored in the third, 94-82, and outscored in overtime as well, 9-5. So, what a way to make a living. But for the New York Islanders, there's still hope. There is. If a GM comes in and says, you know what, I think we can turn this around and make the playoffs next year, I don't know that I'd necessarily disagree. But if you're looking to build a Stanley Cup contender, can you do that? I'm not sure. That's where I would have some discussion. We'll see what they do this summer. When they were leading after the first period, it was rare, but they were pretty good at holding that lead, 15-4-3. If they were leading after the second, 26-2-4. So 32 times they had the lead after the second period, and they only lost twice in regulation when that was the case. So if they score first and they get a lead, they were pretty good this year, but there were a lot of other concerns around the New York Islanders, and we'll see if this year's draft gets that all figured out, but they have an extra draft pick next year too. So if the Islanders decide to do some sort of a little retool here, and if the new general manager says, you know what, that number one draft pick next year, who's that guy? Yeah, that McKenna might be all right in an Islanders jersey. Maybe we don't want to get that much better this offseason. I do think we're going to see that from some teams. It does feel like this might be a tank worthy year where McKenna is tank worthy. But the Islanders will make that decision soon regarding the general manager. You're going to want them in place well before the draft, which again is a little over a month away. And yeah, so who's going to be sitting at their draft table at UBS, because they're not doing the centralized draft. And this might be the only year they don't do the centralized draft, because Bettman's not a big fan of decentralizing the draft like that. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.